You're listening to the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. Remember to like, share, comment, subscribe, and click the bell to make sure you get the latest episodes of the podcast. Be sure to like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Hi everyone and welcome back to another episode of the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast. On today's episode of the podcast, we review the third test between India and Australia from the Holkar Cricket Stadium. It's the Dibbly Dobbly Podcast, and let's get started. Let's review and talk about the third test match of this India and Australia test series, the third test from the Holkar Cricket Stadium in Indore. Now, this third test match was meant to be played at Dharamshala, and that was moved to Indore because Dharamshala wasn't quite up to standards in terms of international cricket, so that's why the test match got moved from the original venue in Dharamshala for this test here in Indore. It was quite an interesting test match. Lots happening, the pitch under scrutiny, a lot of commentary surrounding the pitch and how it played in this test match. The test match ended in 3 and a bit days, and that's been the theme throughout this series. For most of the series, the test matches have ended in 3 days or less. But it just shows how difficult the surfaces have been to play on and bat on. But that's what you expect in India and also in the subcontinent, that it's going to be difficult and it's not going to be easy. But definitely this third test match has created a lot of debate about the pitch. We do know now that Chris Broad, the match referee, gave the pitch at Indore a poor rating under the ICC pitch rating system. And I think many people would agree with that. Some people may think it should be another rating or something like that, but he's given it a poor rating, and I think most people would agree with that. So it was quite an interesting test match. Let's talk about how both teams went about things, India and Australia. But first of all, let's just recap the scores and how the test match went down. India won the toss, which was crucial thing to do in the subcontinent, win the toss, bat first, but didn't really help them out in this test match, didn't it? They were bowled out for 109 in the first innings. Virat Kohli top scored with 22. Matt Kuhneman, second test match for him after debuting in the second test in Delhi. Second test match for him here in Indore. He got 5 for 16. Australia, in reply to India's first innings, were all out for 197. Usman Khawaja top scored with 60. Ravindra Jadeja took 4 for 78 for India. India, trailing by 88 runs on the first innings behind Australia. They were bowled out for 163 in their second innings, and Cheshwar Pujara top scored with 59. And Nathan Lyon took 8 for 64 in a wonderful display of spin bowling. Australia needed 76 runs to win. They chased down the runs with ease in the end. They finished on 1 for 78. Travis Head top scored with 49 not out. And Ravi Ashwin took the only wicket for India, finishing on figures of 1 for 44. Australia won by 9 wickets, and Nathan Lyon was named man of the match. Took 11 wickets for the match, 3 for 35 and 8 for 64 in both innings. So well deserved from Nathan Lyon there. Definitely a main contributor to Australia winning this test match. So that's how the match summary, the scores went down in this test match. And let's talk about India. My thoughts on how India performed in the match. First of all, let's talk about their batting. I thought they struggled in both innings. No surprise. On a very difficult surface, both teams struggled a bit. Not a surprise when you play on pitches like this, which turn a lot, keep low, puff of dust bursting through the top early, as we saw on day one of the test match. The ball was doing that. So you knew that this test match wasn't going to go the distance, and in the end it didn't. They were bowled out for 109, as I mentioned, and 163. And really, India's batting hasn't really fired in the series. Their top order has struggled. Rohit Sharma scored that century in the first test at Nagpur. But since then, their top order has struggled a bit. Virat Kohli struggled. He's looked good when he's batted, but then got out after making starts. Cheshwar Pujara has struggled as well in the series, but played a very good knock as we'll talk about in a minute in the second innings of this third test match, where he top scored with 59. The other batters have struggled. Shreyas Iyer, he's only played 2 test matches, the second and the third one. He's struggled as well. KL Rahul was dropped after the first 2 tests. Shubman Gill came in for him in the third test. He didn't really bat well. So India's top order has been under pressure and hasn't really performed. It's a completely different contrast to the tailenders. You know, Jadeja, Ashwin, Patel, they're the top run scorers for India in this series. The tailenders have... you wouldn't call them tailenders. They're better than tailenders, but where they bat in the batting order in those positions of being a tailender, but they're better than tailenders. They're very accomplished batters, and they can definitely hold the stick. And they've got India out of trouble for most of this series. You know, whenever India's in trouble, they've come in and done the job and scored runs. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to do that in this third test match, given the conditions and how difficult the pitch was for run scoring. So it's been a contrast for India with their batting. Let's talk about how they went in this test match. Well, the first innings, they won the toss, which was key, but in the end, winning the toss didn't mean anything because they lost the test match. Difficult surface, didn't bat well, bowled out for 109, and from that moment on, India were behind the match. They were behind the 8 ball, and whenever you get bowled out for 100 or under 100 in a test match in the first innings, you're pretty much chasing the game, and it's very hard to come back and win. And that's what happened with India. Wickets fell at regular intervals in their innings, 1 for 27, 2 for 34, 3 for 36, 4 for 44, 5 for 45, 6 for 70, 7 for 82, 8 for 88, 9 for 108, and all out for 109. They also lacked partnerships, 27, 7, 2, 8, 1, 25, 12, 6, 20, and 1. Just tells a story of how India struggled in their first innings on day 1 of this test match. And then we get into the second innings, and they're trailing by 88 runs. So they've conceded a first innings lead of 88 runs. Felt like 100 runs on this pitch at Indore. Like in the first innings, India's batters struggled, except for one person in particular. That was Pujara, who top scored with 59. Once again, wickets fell at regular intervals. Lacked partnerships once again. But the only one who looked comfortable was Cheshwar Pujara. Top scored with 59. Really played a good innings. He was pretty good in defence and also in attack. He used his feet well. He did the basics well of batting. And it was a very classy knock from Pujara. That's what you expect from a very good player of his calibre, to go out there and get the job done. And he did. Now, if you take out Pujara's innings of 59, then India, in the end, they did set Australia 75 runs or 76 runs to win in the end, which wasn't enough, as Australia chased down the runs easily in the end. But if you take Pujara's innings of 59 out of the equation, then India would have set Australia maybe a target of 30 or 40 runs to win. So it was a big difference, Pujara's innings, and all the other batters didn't really follow his example, and they struggled. So, as I mentioned, India got a 75-run lead. Not enough, 76 for Australia to win, and they chased down the runs. So India's batting very poor, very underwhelming. You can understand that, given the pitch was difficult and both teams struggled on the surface. But India's batting for some time has not been quite at its best. It's been struggling for some time. You know, Kohli's not in form. Rohit Sharma has glimpses of brilliance and then doesn't do well. He's had a pretty ordinary couple of test matches since the first test. He's gotten out to Nathan Lyon on a few occasions, caught on the crease and getting out bowled in LBW. Pujara's looked a little bit scratchy until this innings in the third test, in the second innings. The other batters have struggled as well. Kes Bharat, the wicketkeeper, struggled with the bat as well. So it hasn't been plain sailing for India with the bat, and they've really struggled. And some of the technical deficiencies and some of the poor techniques from some of their batters have been exposed on this surface. And they've got a lot of work to do to try and rectify the batting woes heading into the next test, which is in Ahmedabad, which is in a few days' time for the final test of this series. So their batting India wasn't the greatest in this test match, and that's where they fell down. Let's talk about the bowling from India, and I don't think they really bowled at their best in this test match. The first innings, they managed to bowl Australia out for 197, but I feel like India were a little bit impatient. They expected things to happen. They didn't really build pressure. They didn't really bowl dot balls or build pressure. Didn't bowl a consistent line and length. Unlike the Australian spinners and the Australian bowlers, they were able to build pressure for long periods of time. The Indian bowlers didn't do that in the first innings. They were a bit impatient. The pitch was doing a lot. So Ashwin and Jadeja and Patel thought, okay, if we bowl the ball in the right area, something will happen and a wicket will fall every ball. That didn't happen, and they were a little bit impatient and maybe a little bit too greedy. And whenever a bowler goes searching for wickets, what happens? Runs get leaked, and that's what happened. Australia were able to score runs because poor deliveries were being bowled, and the Indian spinners and the Indian bowlers in general didn't really do the basics well with the ball. As I mentioned, they were able to get a bit of a collapse going, and Australia had a batting collapse of 6 for 11, which Australia were 4 for 186 to be all out for 197. Umesh Yadav got 3 wickets in that little collapse as well. Ashwin got 3 wickets as well, and they were able to pretty much end the Australian innings quickly. But the first innings bowling performance was a bit of a contrast in that performance there. In the second, and also, just another point before we talk about the second innings, is that Jadeja bowled well. He got 4 wickets in the first innings, but he could have got Marnus Labuschagne out bowled. Now, Marnus Labuschagne added 96 runs with Usman Khawaja for the second wicket. Australia were in a bit of trouble. They were 1 down for not many. They lost Travis Head early, and Labuschagne came in with Khawaja. And Australia were on the ropes a little bit there, under pressure early. Losing an early wicket's not good. But Jadeja comes on, gets rid of Marnus Labuschagne out bowled. He should have been out bowled, but in the end it was a no ball. Now that was a big moment in this test match, because that 96 partnership between Khawaja and Labuschagne for the second wicket was crucial for Australia. That helped Australia and enabled Australia to get an 88-run lead. If Jadeja kept his foot behind the line, and really as a spinner, there's no excuse of bowling no balls, really. Your run-up's not that too long. You're only taking a few paces. But for Jadeja to do that, it's just a sin. It's just a cardinal sin in cricket for a bowler, especially spin bowler, to bowl a no ball. But that could have been a big moment in the match if Labuschagne was out early. And as we know, with Marnus Labuschagne, he's quite a lucky cricketer. And he has been. Obviously, that's been well documented in the Test documentary recently, that Marnus is a very lucky boy. And he was definitely lucky in this innings, in this Test match, especially in the first innings, not getting out bowled because it was a no ball by Jadeja. So, really, Jadeja, he's got a knack of doing that, bowling no balls. And he's bowled a lot in this Test series thus far, so something that he needs to work on. But that was definitely a big moment in the match. The second innings, India defending 76 runs, a tough ask, but it felt like 100 runs on this pitch at Indore. Difficult surface. So if India got a few early wickets, they were definitely in with a shout. And you never know, Australia may have another batting collapse. But, India started well. Ashwin looked threatening. He got Khawaja out for a duck in the first over of the run chase for Australia. And that was the second ball of the first over. Caught behind by Bharat for a duck, second ball duck. And you would have thought that Australia would have been having one of those shaky collapses, and you would think, Australia will find a way to stuff it up and get out cheaply. But that wasn't the case. Ashwin looked threatening, but brilliant from Travis Head and Marnus Labuschagne just to blunt that pressure and absorb the pressure. And India got the ball changed on a few occasions. Ashwin wasn't happy with the ball for some reason. Anyway, that backfired on India. Travis Head, after the ball was changed, he scored some runs. And he counter-attacked, and him and Labuschagne added 78 unbeaten for the second wicket. got Australia over the line. So it wasn't a great bowling performance from India. A bit of a contrast with their batting and bowling in this test match. Not quite at their best. They've got a lot of questions to ask themselves on reflection heading into the fourth test. Obviously, if they won this test match, it would have been 3-0 up. They would have booked a place in the WTC final. But they now need to win the last test to book a place in the WTC final. If Australia win that last test, then it depends what Sri Lanka does against New Zealand. Will really determine whether or not India play Australia in the final at the Oval come June the 6th. So, not a good test match from India. I felt they probably let their guard down, a little bit complacent. They expected to just win again, but that doesn't happen in Test cricket. You really got to be on the money, and you can't be complacent. And I think India was a little bit complacent and didn't quite execute their skills well enough in this test match. So India's performance, bit of a contrast between bat and ball. Let's talk about Australia and how they performed in this test match. Well, for Australia, this is their second win in India in the last 6 years. Obviously, the last win came in Pune in 2017 when they won by 300-odd runs. Steve Smith was captain in that series. Contrast to this series, 6 years later, Pat Cummins had to go home for family reasons, of course, and our thoughts and prayers are with Pat and his family at this time. So Steve Smith had to come in as captain, and he led the side to a wonderful victory by 9 wickets. And Steve Smith, the only Australian captain to win in India in the last few years. It was a great effort by Australia. I thought it was a good, solid team performance. They really found a way to try and negate this difficult surface in Indore. They really believed that they can actually do it, and we saw that. And their performance really reflected the learnings that they learned from the first 2 test matches. They went away. It was, the long break for Australia in between the second and third test matches really helped them. Just to get away from the pressure and get away from, the series in cricket. Just go and explore India. That's what you do on a cricket tour. You go and explore these wonderful countries that you tour. Just embrace the culture and take a bit of a break, take a bit of a breather, reset. And I think that did them the world of good. They came back and they really played well. Now, obviously, they've had a difficult series. The first 2 test matches haven't gone the way that they would have intended. They should have won the second test in Delhi. I think Steve Smith said in the press conference, I think we stuffed that one up, and they did. But good that Smith acknowledged that, and good that the team acknowledged that, because you've got to be honest. But they came back and they learnt the lessons from where did they go wrong in the first 2 test matches, and they've applied the lessons and the learnings into this third test match, and it really paid off. They found a way on the difficult surface, as I mentioned, with the bat. They out-batted India and out-bowled India in this test match. You've got to say they did. You've got to give them credit because they really fought back well. Let's talk about the batting. Let's talk about the first innings performance. They were able to bowl India out for 109, which was a fantastic result for Australia. They wouldn't have liked India to get a total of 150 or maybe close to 200 on this difficult surface in Indore. That would have been very difficult for Australia to try and come back into this test match. But they were able to bowl them out for 109, which was a fantastic result. And that's what Australia needed to do after losing the toss. They were in trouble early in their first innings. They were 1 for 12. They lost Travis Head early, LBW to Jadeja, and Travis Head getting out early for 9. But it was Usman Khawaja and Marnus Labuschagne that really got Australia back on track in their first innings. They added a very handy partnership, which was the highest partnership for the test match of 96 for the second wicket. And Usman Khawaja batted well, 60 off 147 balls. He was the top scorer in this test match. Only him and Pujara were the only 2 batters to score half centuries on this very difficult surface in Indore. He batted well. Marnus Labuschagne in tandem batted well in that partnership, which was a key partnership for Australia. Now, obviously, we mentioned it earlier when we talked about India's bowling, and that key moment where Jadeja bowled Labuschagne, but it was a no ball. And that could have been a key turning point in the test match. It could have been very different, the result in this test match for Australia. But, as we know with Marnus, he has all the luck in the world. Jadeja has a tendency to overstep, and he's done that a few times in the series. And therefore, Labuschagne was able to carry on and bat well with Khawaja and had a good partnership of 96 for the second wicket. And then Peter Handscomb and Cameron Green down the order added a good partnership of 40 runs for the sixth wicket. Now, I know some people were criticising Peter Handscomb and said he was scoring too slowly. He was sort of like Jeffrey Boycott. He scored 19 off 98 balls, but really, I think Peter Handscomb did a fantastic job in terms of just being out there, trying to bat through these difficult periods. I think the way that him and Cameron Green started day two was fantastic. I thought they absolutely soaked up the pressure. That's what they needed to do, and then find a way to score runs and really kick on. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, as Australia had a batting collapse and lost 6 for 11, as we mentioned. 4 for 186 to all out for 197. But it was a good partnership, a handy partnership, and really contributed to Australia's total of 197, which enabled Australia to get a first innings lead of 88 runs. Now, some people said Australia should have had a 100-run lead. But look, at the end of the day, any lead you get is a good lead. And 88 runs on this pitch felt like 100 or maybe 150, because it was very difficult to score runs on this surface. And then we come to the run chase in the second innings. 76 runs to win. Many people said, well, if Australia get off to a good start, they'll be able to chase down the runs and, get the victory and hopefully not try and find a way to stuff it up. But they were able to do it. They chased down the runs with ease in the end, actually, and won by 9 wickets. And that was down to a very good partnership between Travis Head and Marnus Labuschagne. 78 unbeaten for the second wicket after Australia lost Usman Khawaja to Ashwin. First over of the run chase, second ball for a duck, caught behind by wicketkeeper Bharat. But I thought Travis Head and Labuschagne, after that wicket of Khawaja, Ashwin looked pretty good. He looked threatening. So did Jadeja. So it was a real test, and they were able to soak up the pressure and really absorb the pressure. And then they were able to kick off and get those runs. In India, they started to lose belief once the runs started to score. Travis Head was the main contributor. I loved the way he batted, Travis Head. And Australia made a mistake dropping him for the first test, because this is what Travis Head can do. He can come in, be counter-aggressive, and really, take the opposition down. That's what he did to Ashwin. As we mentioned earlier, Ashwin wasn't happy with the ball. He asked the umpires to change it. And then after the ball change, something must have sparked in Travis Head's mind to probably say, right, okay, the ball's been changed. Maybe it won't be as vicious as it was with the other ball. I might as well go on the counter-attack method here, and I might as well take him downtown and see what I can do. And that's what he did, and runs were leaked, and India started to lose belief that they could win this test match, because if India wanted to win this test match, they had to pick up early wickets, and they had to pick up 3 or 4 wickets early to really dent Australia's confidence and have a chance. But Travis Head and Marnus Labuschagne, very good partnership, and were able to get the job done for Australia. So just to recap Australia's performance and what I thought they did well, different approach. They were calmer. They didn't panic as much. It was a different mindset. Yes, they had a batting collapse there, but that was bound to happen on this surface. But besides from that, they really did well to find a way to really bat through this difficult surface in Indore. And I think we should give them credit for that. And they really dug in and found a way to really try and, really put themselves in a good position in this test match with the bat. And that's what they did. So that will give them tremendous confidence going into the next test match in Ahmedabad. Let's talk about the bowling performance. I thought this bowling performance from Australia was probably the best in the series thus far. They bowled India out for 109 and 163, which is a pretty good result. let's talk about the first innings. They lost the toss, and that's not a good feeling when you lose the toss in India. But they had to bowl India out for a low score, because if they were chasing 150 in the first innings, going to be difficult on this type of surface. But they were able to bowl them out for 109. And they kept the pressure on India. I thought the three spinners of Kuhneman, Lyon and Murphy, even Mitchell Starc and Cameron Green to an extent, contributed to building that pressure on India. They took wickets at regular intervals. They did the basics well. The spinners were accurate. They were getting help from the surface. They were getting turn and grip. The ball was bursting through the top. The surface was helping them getting wickets. And I think that was the key for the Australian spinners, was to don't try and do too much. Let the pitch do all the work. And that's what happened. They were able to allow the pitch to do the work, and they were able to get the wickets. Matt Kuhneman was superb in the first innings. He took 5 for 16 in 9 overs, and his second test match, he got his first 5-wicket haul, which was fantastic. And he bowled really well, the left-arm spinner from Queensland. And all the other spinners, Lyon and Murphy contributed and picked up wickets. Lyon picked up 3 wickets. Murphy picked up only 1 wicket. But they all did their job in the first innings. And that really set up Australia to try and put themselves in a good position in the test match. In the second innings, the Australian bowlers had a pretty good buffer. 88-run lead Australia had on India in the first innings. And, as the lead was starting to come down, India were getting closer to building a lead of their own. Australia didn't panic. Australia kept their nerve. And I thought this is where they were able to, wrestle back the momentum in this test match. Because India, for some periods of the test match, India were on top, especially in the second innings. Pujara was batting well, and he was very hard to dislodge. Whoever came in with Pujara stuck around for a little bit, then got out. But they didn't panic, Australia. They kept their nerve, and they thought, right, if we can stay in the contest, and if we can just keep bowling on the spot, keep building pressure, doing the basics with the ball, as you do in Test cricket, build pressure, bowl maidens, keep the runs down, then we can take a wicket. And that's what happened. And as India were getting closer and closer to building the lead, I think after tea on day 2, Shreyas Iyer was batting with Pujara. He took down Kuhneman for a couple of overs, and then he got India the lead. And at that stage, after Iyer did that to Kuhneman, the lead was around about 15 or 20 runs in favour of India. And Australia needed to break that partnership quickly, because Shreyas Iyer was hitting a couple of sixes and Kuhneman was going for some runs. But then Mitchell Starc came on. He got the key wicket of Shreyas Iyer, and it was a fantastic catch by Usman Khawaja at mid-wicket. Just the one-handed scoop claw, or however you like to describe it. Was a fantastic catch, and that really changed the momentum in the second innings for Australia. They needed something to happen. You need something to happen in the field, something that's brilliant, like that catch from Khawaja off Starc at mid-wicket to get rid of Iyer, who was really taking down Kuhneman at that stage. And that really turned the game in favour of Australia in terms of trying to get India out for a low score. And what happened? India lost wickets, and Australia were able to keep them to a 76-run lead. 75-run lead, only needed 76 to win. So that was fantastic. I like that from Australia. They didn't panic. They kept, just believing that if we bowl a good over here and one good ball can change it and could spark a batting collapse. And that's what happened on this pitch, given how difficult the surface was to bat on and score runs. Steve Smith, another brilliant catch at leg slip to get rid of Pujara. An outstanding catch of Nathan Lyon's bowling. Pujara, he has a tendency, to work the ball through square leg or behind square on the leg side, especially against the spinners. We see that a lot. Works it down to fine leg, etc. But on this occasion, Steve Smith put himself at leg slip, and Nathan Lyon bowled a very good delivery to Pujara to get him out. Pujara trying to work it onto the leg side behind square, and got the face of the bat. The ball got the face of the bat, carried straight to Smith at slip. He went diving to his right to catch that ball. Right hand, one-handed catch. Was probably one of the best catches I've seen from Steve Smith in his career. He's taken a few brilliant catches over the journey, Steve Smith, at slip. We all know those good catches that he's taken. But this one tops the list. And it was definitely a game changer because Australia needed to get Pujara out. He was the thorn in the Australian side. He has been for some time. But to get him out the way they did was a big turning point in the match as well. Because if Pujara stuck around with the tail, then Australia would have been chasing maybe 100 runs to win or something. So it was a big difference there. And Steve Smith, wonderful captaincy from Smith, taking over from Cummins, obviously, filling in as vice-captain. I thought he captained well. He rotated the bowl as well. The field placements were good. And he did a very good job, Smith. But the biggest star in the second innings for Australia was Nathan Lyon. Wonderful spell of bowling from Nathan Lyon. He really stood up when needed. And this is what he does, Nathan Lyon. He can win you test matches like this. He's done it so many times. I think, Australia are very lucky to have him in the side. He's got 479 wickets. He's nearly closing in on 500 test wickets. He's a wonderful off-spinner, Nathan Lyon. He's a wonderful bowler for some time. And he's bowled a lot of overs in this series. And that was expected from him to bowl a lot of overs in this series. And he certainly did that. 8 for 64. He deserves every bit of the 8 wickets that he got. Bowled really well. And he was the main contributor to Australia winning this test match. Because without Nathan Lyon's 8 wickets, could have been a different result for Australia. They could have been chasing maybe 120. Something like that if India managed to get there. But they didn't. Nathan Lyon kept sticking at it. He got wickets. The pitch did the work for him. Just outstanding bowling for Nathan Lyon. And for Nathan Lyon, this is his second best figures in Test cricket. He's got 8 for 64 in this Test match in 2023 in Indore. But his best figures in Test cricket also against India, which was back in the last tour in 2017. He got 8 for 50. And you have a look at Nathan Lyon's best figures in Test cricket. Out of the top 6 best figures he's got in Test cricket, pretty much 4 of the 6 are against India. So, as I mentioned, the 8 for 50 against India in 2017 in Bangalore, 8 for 64 in this Test match in Indore, 7 for 94 against India in Delhi in 2013 on that tour, and then the famous Adelaide Oval Test match in 2014-15, he got 7 for 152 in the second innings and bowled Australia to victory. So, which was a fantastic performance from him in that Test match in Adelaide. He got 12 wickets for the match. So, he's a great bowler, Nathan Lyon, and he's durable. He was cramping up a little bit. During his bowling performance, he cramped up a little bit in the second innings. But that's expected. He bowled a lot of overs in both innings, obviously. And you need your main spinners to stand up, and you need your senior players to stand up as well. And Nathan Lyon did that, and that's why Australia went on to win this Test match. Nathan Lyon's bowling was the key. Lo and behold, Australia went on to win this Test match by 9 wickets. So it was a pretty good bowling performance, and all the spinners did their job in both innings. Obviously, Kuhnemann, he struggled a little bit in the second innings. 1 for 60. Got a little bit of tap there from Iyer, as I mentioned. But he got a wicket. He got the big wicket of Curley. Got him out of LBW. So Matt Kuhnemann's got Curley out twice in this series. Got him out in that controversial decision, LBW decision in Delhi in the second test for his first test wicket. But then he got him out LBW, which was plumb as. Hit him on the back foot, Curley. Hit him on the back leg, really, in front of the stumps. And that was a big wicket as well. Todd Murphy didn't take any wickets, but he was very economical in the second innings. 14 overs, 6 maidens, none for 18, going for 1.28 runs per over. So the 3-spinner attack, the only one who's got experience is Nathan Lyon, of course, and Kuhnemann and Murphy are early on in their Test career, obviously. But they did a very good job. And Mitchell Starc only took, he didn't take much too many wickets in this series, too many wickets in this test match, Mitchell Starc. He only took 1 wicket. He was wicketless in the first innings, but he bowled well. The second innings, he bowled well, got the big wicket of Shreyas Iyer off that wonderful catch that Khawaja took, as I mentioned, at mid-wicket. He got 1 for 14 in 7 overs. And he bowled well despite the finger injury, which gave him a few problems in this test match. But he stood up when needed. So it was a very good team performance from Australia. And I think many Australian fans will be happy that Australia finally found a way to get through these difficult periods in this series, because it hasn't been a great series. It's been a difficult series. If Australia did this in the second test in Delhi, it would have been a different result. But better late than never. It was a fantastic win, despite on a surface that was very difficult. But to outbat and outbowl India on this type of surface, and they had a bit of luck as well. When you're playing on these surfaces that are ranked turners and Bunsen burners, you need a bit of luck. But Australia had all the luck and it went their way, and they were able to capitalise on that. So fantastic from Australia to put in a very good team performance. And I think everyone who supports Australia will be very pleased with how the team went about things after losing the first 2 test matches by an innings, and in the second test match by a certain amount of wickets. But, to win this test match by 9 wickets after losing by an innings in the first test in Nagpur, I think that's a significant improvement. And we've seen from Australia throughout this series, as the series has gone on, they've improved in some areas slightly. And we can see that improvement. And we saw in this third test, we saw the signs of improvement there. So hopefully that continues for the last test in Ahmedabad. Now, to wrap up our review of the third test today, let's talk about Ahmedabad. Let's go fast forward and talk about the Ahmedabad test match, which will be the 4th and final test match of this series, which will cap off this Border-Gavaskar series. Now, the 4th test match starts on the 9th of March, and both teams, this test match is very important. For India, they need to win this test match to book a place in the WTC final. If they can do that, they're pretty much in the final. They'll verse Australia. India, they've got a lot of questions. Will they make changes? I think they probably will. Because, when you lose, you think about changes and how can the team be better. So I think for India, I think they will consider some changes to their team. Because for India, if they win this test match, they win the series outright. They've already retained the Border-Gavaskar trophy because they've already won the first 2 test matches. But if they win the 4th test here in Ahmedabad, they will win the series outright. They don't want to draw the series 2-2 with Australia. But for India, they've got a lot of questions to ask themselves. Their batting and bowling wasn't up to scratch in this test match. They were a bit complacent. So it'll be interesting to see how they go in terms of changes there. For Australia, I think they'll keep the same team. Now, there has been some talk about Pat Cummins returning. I don't think Pat Cummins will return, and obviously he's dealing with family problems. His mother's very ill, and once again, I think everyone shares our thoughts and prayers to Pat and his family at this time. I don't think Pat Cummins will return, so I think Australia will keep the same 11. Smith to captain, same 11. Doesn't matter about conditions. I think this is the best 11 that Australia's got. It was good to have Cameron Green back in the side because it gives you that balance that Australia have been lacking in the first 2 test matches when Green was out. Obviously, having Mitchell Starc in the side has definitely helped them in terms of reverse swing, pace, and definitely causing some problems to the Indian tail-enders. So I think this is a good 11 that Australia have, and it's their best 11. Obviously, they've just won the test match in Indore by 9 wickets, so I don't think you want to change a winning side. So I think they'll keep the same 11. Be interesting to see the surface that is provided in Ahmedabad. Obviously, the pitch got rated poor at Indore for the 3rd test. Match referee Chris Broad gave it a poor rating. So some demerit points have been issued there. So I don't think the world's biggest cricket stadium in the world, that holds over 130,000 or so people, will want a poor rating for this pitch because it's a state-of-the-art stadium and you want to have international games of cricket played there. So I think we may see a different surface to what we saw on the third test here in Indore. Probably a surface that may be similar of the first two test matches, but it'll be interesting to see what pitch is on offer. But anyway, both teams have to play on the surface that's prepared, and that's the way it is. So it'll be an interesting last test match of the series. But Australia definitely got momentum. They feel confident. They feel like we can actually draw the series. India under a little bit of pressure. They need to bounce back. So it'll be an interesting last test match of the series. Now, if you're listening to this episode of the podcast on YouTube, let us know in the comments your thoughts on the test match. How would you rate both teams' performances, India and Australia? Do you think, both teams, need to improve in some areas? So let us know in the comments your thoughts. It'll be interesting to read what people have to say on this test match and also about the pitch and other stuff as well. But let's hope for a very exciting finish to the last test match of this Border Gavaskar series between India and Australia. Well, that's all the time we have for this episode. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell to get the latest episodes of the podcast, and like and share our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. Until next time, keep safe and bye for now.